Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namassami. Ajahn Pasanno invited me to offer some reflections. Thank you, Luang Por. So, some people know, some people perhaps don't know. I used to live at Abhayagiri about 17 or 18 years ago, and I spent 1.5 years here. My connection with Abhayagiri was, of course, Ajahn Pasanno. So when I was anagarika at Wat Nananchat, Ajahn Achalo was the abbot, and then Ajahn Pasanno had been on retreat in Chithurst, I believe, for 1 year, and then he came back and took over from Ajahn Achalo, picked up the abbot's duties once more, and so Ajahn Pasanno kindly helped to train me up to ordain as a novice, Samanera, and took me off to ordain with Ajahn Luang Por Pasanno. And Luang Por Pasanno's final year at Wat Nananchat was my first year at Wat Nananchat. So I had the good fortune to be his attendant and established a teacher-student, mentor relationship. That was my very good fortune. So coming back 17 years later, seeing Abhayagiri as in the same place, at the same time as a very different place. In those days, I think the community would have been about half this size. And Luang Por was 18 years younger, so was I. And it was very beautiful this last weekend to see this celebration, culmination of this offering of the meditation hall and the cloister complex of buildings. And I was very happy to be invited and to be able to come and rejoice in all of the goodness. I also played a small part in contributing some things. Ajahn Pasanno asked me to help with the Buddha statue, so that was my honor to help supervise the carving of the sandstone Buddha, which we now have we can now enjoy in the meditation hall. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. This was the third attempt in Buddhism. Sometimes we have to do things 3 times. And the main contemplation for me in this period of time, observing the changes and developments, is one of the results of commitment and determination, and of in a way, plodding, but plodding in an unrelenting, unstopping, being determined never to go backwards manner. Because I know this Dhamma hall and complex of buildings, the cloister buildings, took much longer to build than anyone thought they would, cost a lot more money than people thought they would, and many more meetings than people would have assumed. And yet, the final result may actually also be better than what people had envisioned. We're all noticing the beautiful, fresh, cool air that flows through the building, seemingly effortlessly. And in a place that is very hot in summer, what a wonderful refuge in terms of a physical space. I was also considering the location, Abhayagiri being very much a community and quite an engaged community. To have this space specifically dedicated for meditation, chanting, contemplation of Dhamma, taking precepts, to have this sacred space somewhere between the kitchen and the offices is a very good thing, because it's a constant reminder where it's not an ordinary place. It's a monastery. It's a place that exists for supporting people to train in thought and speech and action, and to cultivate meditation or meditative qualities. And so to have this sacred space in the middle of this complex is really wonderful. Just as is having another Buddha statue that graces the hill, looking down on this area. That if ever things seem to get a bit much, or we might be losing track of why we're here, we have this beautiful reminder. Take some space, establish mindful awareness, and try to let go of the unwholesome, and try to keep generating and establishing the wholesome. So you have, after 22 years of very consistent, diligent, hard work, you have this beautiful facility. Similarly, with this Buddha statue, I had Ajahn Pasanno, he saw one at Anandagiri, the small monastery that I've been developing, and he liked it. And so we both thought it would be nice to have a stone image because of the simplicity and the elegance, but also the kind of weight of stone. It has its own weight and stillness. It's a very beautiful medium. And also it has a direct relationship to the ancient traditions of India, where the very first Buddhist statues in Afghanistan and Pakistan and India were made of stone. Unfortunately, the first attempt, sometimes in Thailand, contractors, builders, tradespeople, agreements are not agreements. So when Luang Por Cha teaches us to see everything as mainea, not sure, Thailand is a great opportunity for contemplating this. Because oftentimes agreements are not sure. And so this artist who gave me his agreement that he would do his best work and do it himself at my request, had one of his subordinates make the first image, and he did the finishing. So the proportions were wrong. And so I scolded him and I said, no, I meant it. It has to be your work. It has to be the best work, because this is for one of my teachers, for an important monastery. And it has to be very good. And so he did a second attempt, and he did the same thing. And then I gave up. I said, okay, I've given him 2 chances. The first one we didn't have to pay for. The second one we actually found a sponsor to offer it to a different monastery. And in the meantime, a period of 2 years, I discovered a different sculptor who was more professional. And so we asked him if he'd please take on this project. And the third attempt came out quite nicely. And I travelled up to mettā in Chiang Rai province and supervised the finishing. There's something that I noticed about the statue and coming in and meditating yesterday, and also coming in and having a look today, that I thought I'd share because I think it's relevant to our training and also to some of the habits that we have as people living in Western countries. So if you stand 1 meter from this sandstone statue, you'll notice that it appears to have blemishes, marks, almost looks like it could be mouldy in parts. And that's just part of the characteristic of this type of sandstone. It has some colorings, some streaks. What's interesting though is if you stand back, and so if you look really close, you could find that unbeautiful, unpleasant. You could be disappointed. You think, I want even color and tone. But if you stand back about 3 meters from the very same statue, you notice that it has a beautiful texture which announces that it's stone. You stand back 3 meters and you say, oh, what a lovely sandstone image. It's the very fact of the diversity, some texture, some color that gives it that beautiful texture of sandstone. If you stand back 6 meters, what you see is a perfectly even, yellowy beige sandstone image without blemishes. So I think in our practice, what I'm going to talk about now is the fault-finding mind, something that I think we all have some experience with. And I'm going to tell a story about one life-changing experience I had with Ajahn Pasanno when I was a novice. I'm going to pull together a few themes here. So I think it was about the middle of the Pansa, the rainy season retreat. I think I was a 23-year-old young man. And I was Ajahn Pasanno's, he wasn't yet Luang Por, he was Ajahn Pasanno, who would have been about my age, I think, at that time. And we knew him as Ajahn Pasanno, and Ajahn Pasanno. I was his attendant, and Wat Nananchat had a branch monastery called Pujom Gom, which is in a national park on the border of the Mekong River in Ubon province. Very beautiful place. Ajahn Pasanno invited me as his attendant and also Tan Punyo, my good friend, to go with him for a few days to Pujom Gom to visit the monks from Wat Nananchat who were spending their rainy season retreat there. And so I did that, happily went along with my Ajahn, and when we got there, I found that the bhikkhus were practicing very well. They were very inspiring. I recall Ajahn Chandiko and Ajahn Sujato wanted to discuss suttas with Ajahn Pasanno. And Ajahn Sri Panyo, who was Tan Sri Panyo, very junior monk at the time, that would have been his first Pansa, he was diligently chanting, learning to chant the Patimokkha. Unfortunately, rather than having a positive effect on my mind, because I was experiencing a lot of doubts and restlessness, and at that time, the last thing I wanted to do was think about suttas. And I remembered that I'd been really struggling to memorize the morning chanting. And there was this pressure, before becoming a bhikkhu at Wat Nananchat, you have to know the morning chanting and the evening chanting and the parittas by heart, the protection chants. So I was trying to do my chanting, but I was struggling. And so I discovered that Ajahn Sri Panyo had learnt the Patimokkha in 6 weeks. And the Patimokkha is about a 40-minute chant. And I was inspired. I was inspired by their behavior, their what they say in Thai, tang chai, kwam tang chai, by their applying themselves diligently. But then I had a bad reaction to this. I kind of thought, my response to this was, whatever these guys are doing, that's not what I'm doing. And I had a kind of rejecting my own efforts. I can't do this. I'm not of this caliber, was the response I had. And so Ajahn Pasanno had just wanted to take novice Achalo for a bit of an adventure, to change of atmosphere. But I came back kind of depressed, and this comes from comparing to other people. And so, still a vain young man, I decided, I think it was just a couple of weeks later, it was just 2 weeks left before the end of the rainy season retreat, and I decided not to shave my eyebrows. The reason I decided not to shave my eyebrows is I was going to disrobe. And after I disrobed, I was keen to find a new lover. And I was thinking that having, this is how it was, I was thinking that having nice eyebrows would be helpful. And not having eyebrows might not be helpful. So anyway, I was sweeping the leaves around my Luang Por's kuti, and he said, "Samana Achalo, you haven't shaved your eyebrows." I said, "No, I haven't shaved my eyebrows, and I'm not going to." "Why not?" I said, "Because I've decided that I'm going to disrobe in 2 weeks. And when I disrobe, I want eyebrows." It is a bit strange, shaving eyebrows, it's a bit strange. But so he said, "Why? Why have you decided this, Achalo?" And I said, "Well, we went to visit those monks, those inspiring monks, and I just realized that I'm not doing the same thing as them. They're reading suttas and learning the Patimokkha, and I'm just still kind of sexually fantasizing and struggling, and so I just kind of feel like it's been great, but it might not be for me." And so Ajahn Pasanno, he asked some wise questions. He said, "Achalo, 1 year ago," excuse me, Ajahn Pasanno asked me, 1 year ago, were you having these thoughts?" I said, yeah, I was. "And 1 year ago, not only were you having these thoughts, you were acting on them." "Yeah, that's right." And he said, "So now," and he asked me, 1 year ago, did you think there was anything wrong with these thoughts?" "No, not particularly," my answer. And he said, "So actually there's been growth and development. You're now now able to observe things that are in your mind and know that they're unwholesome. And you have the aspiration to abandon them, but you can't yet, but at least you know what is wholesome and what is unwholesome." And so he said, "That's actually development." And he said, "So I think you're doing okay, and you shouldn't compare yourself to these other monks, because sometimes it's not really about getting the form perfect. That's part of it, but it's not what it's really about. What it's really about is different individuals growing, is their development from wherever it is that they are." And so I heard his words and I thought, yeah, it's true. And then he said, "Achalo, go and shave your eyebrows." And I said, "Cup." And so I did. And so it's like the fault-finding mind, it's like looking at the Buddha statue from a meter, isn't it? There's marks, there's streaks, there's discoloration. If you look at those and you only look at those, it's not beautiful. Step back a few meters and you look at a bigger picture, or you look at a process. And I think this is people who've grown up in countries like the United States, Australia, Canada, Germany, France, all of these places. We have a discriminating faculty. And this is one of our biggest strengths, and it's also one of our biggest challenges, because when it's a strength, it actually brings us to this training, because we're capable of deducing that unsatisfactoriness is true. There is definitely unsatisfactoriness. And we're capable of sifting through various other paradigms. Christianity might not work for us as a paradigm, or Hinduism, or various other things, yoga, whatever we might try, and then we discover Buddhism makes very good sense. And so our discriminating wisdom faculty actually, and our intelligence, brings us to this training. When we get here, and when we come to it, I think so much more of our practice then is to stop judging and to try to stop discriminating, but this is hard. Sometimes the very habit that brought us to the training is the thing that causes a lot of pain once we start to practice. And this is where I think the mettā bhavana, cultivation of loving kindness, is very helpful, because the cultivation of loving kindness on a daily basis, it helps us to accept things, lovingly accept things the way they are in ourselves and in others. And then also the other side is when one can radiate loving kindness outwards as well. But I think in order to be mindful of things as the way they are, which is what is going to lead to insight, is we have to stop judging things whenever they come. So we're doing that so often. We think we know the way things are and we judge them. And so the mind is often permeated with a kind of a critical, fault-finding filter. And when we apply this to the things outside of ourselves, then it's the karma of that is that we're applying it inwardly as well. So however critical you might be at times about things outside, the downside to that is that very same habit will then be tearing your own efforts apart when you come to practice. And so this can be a very painful and debilitating habit, and it was for me as a junior monk, so much so that I had no choice really but to become very diligent about cultivating loving kindness so that I would stop doing that. And certainly now can see the benefits of establishing a discipline around loving kindness, and that capacity to step back from things, mettā bhavana, on cultivating mudita, all of these brahmaviharas, loving kindness, the compassion, the appreciative joy, empathic joy, they make the mind more spacious. And it's not that you don't see the faults, but you understand that that's not all that's there. And so Ajahn Achalo on that occasion, in the spirit of a true mentor, was able to kind of peel the fingers off grasping that so tightly and to say, step back, Achalo, look at the bigger picture, part of a process, one step at a time, keep going. And this is actually something that we need to say to ourselves, isn't it? This kind of let that go, put that down, step back, keep going. And you have to learn to speak to yourself with kindness and encouragement, and you have to be able to rejoice. This mudita, similarly with rejoicing about others' good qualities, you also have to be able to pat yourself on the back sometimes. And speaking with one bhikkhu last night, I won't mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he came to visit me, and he's learning the Patimokkha, and he made a comment. He says, "Yeah, I'm learning the Patimokkha because I think it's one of the only things that I can do," he said. And I immediately recognized, oh, I know that. I'm not sure about that. So I asked that bhikkhu, well, can you do the morning chanting? Yes. Can you do the evening chanting? Yes. Can you do the protective chants? Yes. Can you do the funeral chants? Yes. Do you come and do your chores on time? Yes. Do you go to the meetings? Yes. Do you contribute to the work periods? Yes. But the Patimokkha is one of the only things you're going to be able to do. I said, sounds like you're doing okay. Sounds like you can do a few things. And this kind of habit that people have of withholding kindness and not seeing goodness and belittling themselves is kind of an attitude. And this monk told me that Ajahn Pasanno had told him that he had possibly inherited Catholic guilt from his parents. So this is something, if we do have a guilt problem or a withholding loving kindness problem, it is a problem. And we do need to remedy it by practicing appreciation and kindness and learning how it's like replacement by opposite. If we have a very pervasive habit of judging and being critical of ourselves and others, you might not even notice how pervasive it is. It's like the fish swimming in water. Doesn't know what water is and until he's taken out of it. So when you get, it's like putting chinks in the armor. If you can have some genuine moments of mettā, genuine moments of mudita, some appreciation, see your own good qualities, then when that negative habit comes back, you'll have a sensitized, more spacious mind that recognizes, oh, that's actually not wholesome. And I don't actually have to believe that. So this takes commitment and effort and discipline, and really supports the capacity to be with the breath as it is. If we can drop the fault finding that so often takes us away with being with the breath, if we can, this attitude of loving appreciation, actually we have to bring loving appreciation to the breathing. And it's very helpful as a primer. So I myself tend to practice metta meditation for about 5 to 10 minutes of every sitting, and then I'll incline the awareness to just being aware of the feelings of the breath. But I find that the metta helps to be with it with an attitude of contentment, less restlessness, more well-being, and the mind is more likely to still. And when you get a sense for the energy of metta in the heart area, you come to meditate, and you might notice that there's some of the hindrances. Now, all of these hindrances have a feeling component in the heart area, in my experience, and it's always painful. So this is part of our cittanupassana and our vedana, awareness of feelings, awareness of mind states. So we're doing breath meditation, but you become aware there's feelings there, then there's mind states there. And so with the mettā, you can use the energy of mettā to pacify and almost like wash away. So it's a way of pacifying the hindrances, gladdening the mind, brightening the mind. And you don't have to get caught in the thoughts, you don't have to get caught in the mind states, you just notice that it hurts. Ouch. This is dukkha, the first noble truth. And then you respond to it with trying to let it go. When you let go of the causes, or craving for or craving not for, or wanting to be something else, it is okay, accepting things as they are. And you use this replacement through opposites. The Buddha explains the Brahma-viharas as being extremely wholesome mind states that can be cultivated boundlessly. And so you become a little bit adept at using mettā to literally wash the hindrances out of your mind or pacify the pain, and then you probably find that you can be very content to be with the breath and have quite longer sessions because of the contentment that arises. So I did want to say a few words about mettā, because I think for Westerners, I think it's a challenge, and I think immensely helpful. Of course, with mettā, if we do it too much and we don't balance our practice, we can start falling in love. And so as celibate monastics, that's something we don't want to do too often. So we balance it with other contemplations. That's how wise contemplation, yoniso manasikara, we contemplate death, awareness of death and impermanence, and body contemplation, the parts of the body as elements, these other balancing kammattanas that we practice along with breath meditation. And buddhanusati, the beautiful qualities of the Buddha and the Sangha, these ways that we brighten the mind and re-establish, deepen our faith, and uproot the greed energies and pacify the angry, hateful energies. So these things balance. And we're very fortunate in this tradition because we have all of these tools. Lord Buddha gave us everything we need. It's really incredible. Anapanasati for calming, Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati for deepening our faith, helping us feel secure, having a refuge, mettā for pacifying irritation and aversion, body contemplation for uprooting the greed. It's really, we have everything we need. It's quite amazing. And it's simple. I think another tremendous strength of the forest tradition is that it's simple. It's not that complicated to understand. The thing that's difficult is being consistent with all of our practices and making sure that we're doing them in a way which is balanced and is making our mind more balanced. I was thinking also a little bit about the results of determination and commitment. Particularly as Ajahn Pasanno is going to be leaving this monastery soon, after I think it's 22 years, and he plans to come back, but in a different function, with a different role. And just the incredible commitment that Luang Por Pasanno demonstrated in helping to create, liaising and facilitating, along with Ajahn Amaro's help, of course, in the earlier years. And all of the meetings, many of you know, many of you attend the meetings as well. So you're very aware of the amount of meetings that are required to fulfill the bylaws for building in California in this day and age. And contractors, architects, engineers, lawyers, committees, other monks. There's really a lot of meetings. And so Ajahn Pasanno, as far as I've observed, has used this as a part of creating a sense of community, which is, it's the best thing you can do with it, really. What are you going to do about having to have lots of meetings? Okay, well, embrace it as something that the community has to do. And then through this, establish a sense of community. So that's very palpable when you come to Abhayagiri, both in the Sangha and in the relationship with the Sangha and the laity. It's a real sense of community. This community knows what its duties are, they do their duties well, and they cooperate. Everything's clean. I had an experience during the Ngan. I think I put something down in the wrong place on 2 occasions, and within 5 minutes it had been put in the correct place. And I had to ask, where's my such and such? But this shows that the monks have been well trained. If put things in their right place, it's part of what makes a monastery look clean and well cared for. You don't get this clutter building up everywhere. So when one makes these qualities of determination and commitment are very closely linked. So adhitthana is one of the 10 paramis in this Pali list. And so adhitthana is both making a determination. So you set the determination that you're going to do something, you want to do something, you make that your goal. But then you have to practice determination in doing that, and you have to fulfill it. And so that's similar to making a commitment. Once you make a commitment, you have to be committed to fulfilling it. And that's where we apply these the 4 great efforts, very closely related. Maintaining these efforts to fulfill your commitments to meet the goal that you're determined to meet. There's a lot of overlap with these various lists, but has seen quite a remarkable results of just sticking to it until it's done. Ajahn Pasanno said that he does feel a sense of accomplishment, and it was very satisfying. What a wonderful way for Ajahn to be able to leave. And both Ajahn Yaniko and Ajahn Karunadhammo are good friends of mine, and they'll be taking on extra duties when Luang Por leaves. But he's handing over something in very good shape, and also with a community that has trained in functioning as a community. So I am confident that things will go well. I'm also quite sure that there will be bumps and painful bits. So I was going to talk a little bit about, I can kind of see, having been a junior monk and now being somewhere in the middle, and also having been an abbot, albeit of a smaller situation, but nonetheless has its challenges for the last 7.5 years. I think I have some idea of what Ajahn Karunadhammo and Ajahn Yaniko might be going to have to practice with. And I also have some idea of what the junior monks are going to have to practice with in having new abbots, and with these two being new abbots. So I thought I would say a little bit about that, just as hopefully broaden people's vision, and to help you to have empathy on both sides, and to continue to support each other in a process. So my experience of becoming a new abbot was painful. So if we understand that we all have some skills, all of us have some skills, and when you come to have to take on a leadership role, you will find that the skills that you have need to be developed further and quickly. Not only that, you'll find that the areas where you don't have skills are also areas where you need to develop skills quickly. And so, also you don't get days off. So the experience of having to further develop whatever skills you have at the same time as having to develop new skills, day after day after day, without any days off, is exhausting. The quality of fatigue, I never could have known how tired I would feel and how hard it would be. And so we have to add to this that everybody's like staring and very willing to mention when you don't quite meet the standard. So you are having to learn new skills and stretch old skills in public with everybody very quick and fast to suggest ways you might do it better and why they wouldn't have done it that way. And this isn't a pleasant process. It is, of course, beneficial, I believe. So when I first was starting an Abhayagiri, I think within the first 6 months, I actually came to pay respects to Ajahn Pasanno, and I asked for his blessing, and I also asked him if he thought it was actually a good idea. Do you think this thing I'm doing, Luang Por, is something I should be doing? What do you think about it? And so at that time I'd been a monk for 14 years, 14 pantsas, plus novice and pakao, so 15, 16 years of training, and just approaching 40. And Luang Por Pasanno basically said he thought it was a good thing for several reasons. He felt that the community of Western monks in Thailand could benefit from another place that was established especially for people to deepen their meditation, not a training monastery as such, but a place where people who've had quite a bit of training could go and then deepen their meditation practice. And he also thought it was a very good thing that it was a long way from Bangkok, because my hope to keep things fairly simple and connected in a grassroots way, we have a chance. There's some challenges with being a foreign monk in Thailand. If you are close to a large city, you will have many visitors. We're somewhat interesting to Thai people. So being precisely in the middle of nowhere, Phetchabun, Khao Khor in Phetchabun, 6 hours from Bangkok and 9 hours from Ubon, I have been able to keep it fairly simple, fairly quiet place. And so I received Ajah's blessing. But I have another teacher, Ajahn Achalo in Thailand, and he told me one day, I was giving him a massage, and I think by way of warning, he said, "Achalo, you think your happiness is going to increase and increase, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe. Suppose so." And he says, "Soon you will know what hell is." I'm like, "What? Where'd that come from?" I'm like, "You think being an abbot, you're going to be able to do things your way finally, and you're going to know how to do it." And he says, "But there are going to be challenges." And he said, "In the future, you are going to have to patiently endure, Achalo." And I thought I'd already patiently endured. And I said, "Well, why am I doing it? Why would I do it if it's going to be that difficult?" Well, the first thing he said was, "Well, I felt like I had to tell you something, because I didn't tell you, you come back and say, 'Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me it's going to be that difficult?'" But he said, "I do support you in doing it, and I do think you should do it. But be prepared. You'll have to patiently endure." And he said, "The fact that you have been offered this land and you have some support to go ahead with this project, that's merit. The challenges and difficulties that you will meet, that's your karma." So I was warned. And I won't go into the details of what the challenges were, what the karma was, but for sure there was. I think something happens when you change your status from being someone that's living within a community to try to develop yourself and contribute to that community. When that changes to actually leading something which will have benefit for a group of people, you're getting involved in a lot of other people's karma. In a good way, but you have to expect, we sometimes talk about mara, but we also have karma mara, kilesa mara. So when we're going to make a more strenuous effort at doing good that has wholesome and positive implications for a larger group of people, you probably have to expect that Mara is going to visit, and in various ways. So in terms of one's own limitations that we need to grow out of, expand our abilities, and the worldly dhammas. So the gain, the offerings, the loss, the praise, the blame, the criticism, the pleasure, the pain, the happiness, the suffering. So all of that gets amplified. And so with that, there lies the opportunity to further develop wisdom and patient endurance. Ajahn Jandi once said, becoming an abbot is, in his experience, he said, becoming an abbot is like, suppose you're a sword, you're the sword. And he said, so the sword is plunged into the hot coals, and it's heated and heated and heated until it's flaming hot. Then you take that out, and you beat it, and you beat it, and someone's beating it on the edge. Beat, 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 boom, 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 to get that sharp edge. And then as soon as it's almost sharp, plunge it back into the coals, and make it flaming red again. Take it out, okay, beat it, beat it, beat it. He said, that's his experience of being an abbot. In the hot coals, and then being beaten. And so the analogy of the sword is, of course, wisdom. So in the process of being heated and burned, and in the process of getting beaten, the abbot has extra opportunities to contemplate the equal nature of praise and blame, and the equal nature of happiness and suffering. It's just this much, it arises and ceases. And this just having to come back to doing one's duty, to repay a debt of gratitude, and to help others to have the opportunity that you had. And one of the things Ajahn Pasanno said to me when I came here as well was, he said that it's hard, it's a difficult path, but what will be the final result is that things that used to affect you, little things that used to affect you, you will find that they don't affect you. Small things hardly affect you at all, and that things that used to be really difficult become easier to endure because there's so much endurance involved. And that things that were hard become easy, and things that may have seemed impossible become possible. So that's the final result of surrendering to a advanced training in practicing with the 8 worldly dhammas. So for the younger members of the community who might be having feelings like, but Ajahn Krunadhammo and Ajahn Yaniko, they're not Luang Por. It might be worth considering that when Ajahn Pasanno was first an abbot, I think at 7 pansas? 7 or 8 pansas. At 8 pansas, when Ajahn Pasanno was first an abbot, he wasn't Luang Por either. How many pansas do you have now? You said?
44.
Yeah, so 36 years later, Luang Por is Luang Por. And all of the qualities that you observe and lovingly appreciate, the steadiness, the equanimity, the commitment, the keeping cool and balanced response, well, this is the result of a lot of practice. And so this community has trained in supporting one another and functioning as a community. And so now I ask, because also Ajahn Krunadhammo and Ajahn Yaniko are my friends, so I'm going to ask the junior members to try to be kind to them and understand and see them as being in a process. And if when the challenges come, these two venerables patiently endure and develop their insights further and just keep doing their duty, you will find that in a period of years that they do have more of a sense of presence, dependability. They will become Luang Por, but you have to give them a few years, and you have to understand that they will make some mistakes and they will have weaknesses and they'll have strengths, and it's a process. The other day, for myself, seeing Ajahn Achalo, Luang Por Liam, Ajahn Achalo, Luang Por Pasanno, and Luang Por Viradhammo all together in one room, all sitting quite close, was very moving for me, because Ajahn Achalo ordained me as an anagarika, Luang Por Pasanno ordained me as a samanera, and Ajahn Achalo was my chanting acharya, took me to Wat Pah Pong to ordain with Luang Por Liam. And then Ajahn Viradhammo was the acting abbot at Amaravati when I spent 6 months there. And so it's very interesting for me to be aware on one level that while I was training with these various people, there were the parts of their character and the parts of their training that I appreciated, and there were the parts that I really didn't like. And go forward around 20 years, what comes up for me now when I see those people is only gratitude. There's just gratitude. There's no feeling of fault finding. There's no feeling of why did they do it that way, why don't they do it that way. There's just this awareness of these are the noble beings that maintained the infrastructure in the institution and kept reminding us of what we should be doing so that I could be here today. And the only perception that comes up is how grateful I am to these beautiful bhikkhus and how much I love them. And so that's also, obviously the result of my practice, that we don't hang on to our critical perceptions forever, thank goodness, and that we do develop more and more mudita, and natural feelings of gratitude arise. But it's not the case that none of those people had faults. They all had faults, they all had weaknesses, but they all did their duty, which is the important thing. And they gave me and many others an excellent opportunity. And so looking back on that, and they all matured. Everyone's continuing to mature. That's the wonderful thing about our training, is if we keep at it, wholesome qualities increase, and wisdom increases, mindfulness increases, insight increases, and negative qualities, the greed, the hatred, the vanity, the conceit, all of these things decrease. And everybody, if they stick at it long enough, becomes a beautiful, venerable Luang Por. So I'm very happy that Ajahn Pasanno, after so much selfless service, gets a big break. I think that's very well-deserved. And I also rejoice in Ajahn Krunadhammo and Ajahn Naniko's offering of service for this next period. And I sympathize with the pain and the suffering that will be involved in the process on both sides, for those venerables and also for the people in training. And at the same time, I have total confidence that you are in a good situation and you know how to cooperate, and if you all just do your duty, that you'll continue to grow. So I'm just going to talk for a few more minutes, changing themes now, but it's an overlap of themes but a different situation. I was recently with my mother in Australia, and hadn't been to Australia for 2 years. And it was my father passed away 2 years ago. And so I had an opportunity to check in with my mum. And she had been to Thailand 18 months ago. She had a very nice visit. And got to chat with her. And she told me she relayed her experience of her last few days with my father. And one of the reasons I'm going to talk about this is, since I arrived, a few people have come and personally thanked me for a series of guided meditations on death and dying. So since I know that there are people in the community that appreciate that, I'm going to just talk about this a little bit. So my dad had lung cancer, and he smoked cigarettes a packet a day for 40 years, so that's not so surprising. But he had given up, I think, 20 years before, and he was discovered that he had an unoperable tumor in his lung. And But he had some radiation and some chemotherapy, and he was able to live another 2 years without too much discomfort, actually. He was quite lucky. And it's interesting, I think he was kind of in denial about it. He's what I would call a 50s man. He was a football player, and he was a boxer as well. And he was a tough guy. Tough, my dad. And but good-hearted, a good-hearted man. And so he would never mention the cancer word. He would say, sometimes refer to that thing in my lung, but he wouldn't mention cancer. And so I used to feel a bit frustrated about this, because I used to think that he should be more truthful about it, what it is and where it's taking him, and he should be preparing. And so that's what we do. We practice being truthful and really having a good look at things and not denying it. But my dad, no, he's not going to talk about that. But in hindsight, it's curious, that seemed to have served him, because he wasn't depressed and he wasn't negative. He was just determined to fight it in a way, there's a bit of delusion there, but it didn't allow him to become depressed or negative or resentful or ask, why me? He just got on with it. So how that manifested was, my dad was eating normally and going to the bathroom himself with a stage 4 cancer until 6 days before he died, because he just wasn't going to let it beat him. Then when he had to go to hospice, and they were very fortunate also, it turns out my mother's neighbour was the senior nurse in palliative care in their city. So when the time came that he needed palliative care, she got him his own room, just 10 minutes walk from where my mum lived. And so he went into care, and so my younger brother was visiting him in his room. So what happens is the fluids fill the lungs, and the body isn't able to absorb oxygen, and so they put in oxygen, but basically when you get to that stage you don't have very long. There's going to become a point where the lungs are full of liquid and you essentially drown in your own fluids. So he's in the bed and he can't move, and he's got the tube up his nose, and he says to my brother, "Mate, I don't think I'm going to make it." And it's like a few days before he died, and my brother Craig's like, "No, Dad, don't think you're going to make it." And but then my mum was visiting him. So it was the night that he died. It was 2 a.m. My mum was asleep in her smaller house, and my dad was about to die. And my mum, she said she woke up as if this string was pulling her. She said, like almost like a fishing line or something, like and she had to go. And my mother usually is a fairly fearful lady. She's not the kind of person that's going to go walking around the streets on her own at night. But she did. She headed straight for the door, and she was going to see my dad, and my sister was staying with her, and my sister asked, "Mum, where are you going?" "I'm going to see your father." "Well, I'll drive you." "No, I want to walk." "Well, I'll come." "No, I want to go alone," she said. So at 2 a.m, my mum, she was 79, at that time she was 77, was walking to the hospice in pitch black at 2 a.m. And she went into the room that my dad was in, and she just held his hand. And it was like a few minutes later that he took his last breath. And the reason I mention this now is it's also along this theme of commitment and determination. So, and how it works and how it affects the mind. And so when my mum took her wedding vows, through sickness and health, through good and bad, until death do us part. And so she'd made a vow that she really meant. And it was curious, because when I was a teenager, they used to fight sometimes, and I used to wish they'd get a divorce, because I didn't like the way they were speaking to each other. I think if people are speaking to each other like this, they shouldn't be together anymore. But my opinion about that changed when I saw that when they were older, and their children, because Australia's like America, it's a huge country, and people tend to live not necessarily where their parents are. Their careers and their families, their choices take them away. So when they both began to have health challenges, they were real friends to each other and really depended upon each other to get to their appointments and to take their medicines. And so I saw how they became good friends in old age once life was less stressful without 6 kids. But I thought that was really beautiful, that she'd made that vow, until death us do part. So there she was asleep. She woke up. My husband's about to die. I made a vow to be there until death. So she walks through the streets and she's holding his hand. And I can get emotional. Go change the subject. So I get emotional when I think about that, because it's very beautiful, isn't it? And so I was visiting my mum, and she was telling me this with what was very nice to observe was a sense of accomplishment that she had. Because for her generation, approaching 80, I'm not criticizing anyone who gets a divorce, so like I said, I used to wish they would get one, but the fact that they didn't, and what they cultivated in that relationship, was a commitment, patience, capacity to forgive, and not giving up on each other. So commitment and determination, and then fulfilling a vow. My mum, she was telling me over the kitchen table that she feels good that she was a good wife and that she did her duty till the last moment. And there's a sense of dignity and a sense of accomplishment that she has about that, as well as having raised 6 children. So it's, but it is an interesting example of the way commitment and determination leaves very deep imprints in the mind that will have very particular results. So obviously in this training, very good to have a sense of commitment and determination. So for the monks, well, what Nananchat used to have this standard, probably still does, that you can try out being a novice, but if you want to be a bhikkhu, you have to make the vow to do it for 5 years. And so I considered myself fortunate that nobody actually asked me at the end of my novice period, "Are you committed for 5 years?" Because I couldn't have said yes. I would say, "Well, can I just try for 6 months?" So nobody asked me. And the way I had to approach determination and commitment, being a very sensitive and emotional young man, one of the reasons Ajahn Pasanno called me Achalo, which means unshakable, is that I was often shaking. And he suggested that that was something to aspire to, unshakability. And so I could commit to 1 pansa. And in that first year, I would say 5 days out of 7 I wanted to disrobe as a 23-year-old living in Thailand. And then people often ask, well, why? Why didn't you? And it's because the other 2 days I was experiencing a quality of contentment and lack of remorse, lack of anxiety that I knew I would not if I wasn't a monk. I knew I would have no way as a layperson of experiencing that quality of blamelessness and contentment. So I was willing to put up with it. And then when I got to the end of the first pansa, I determined, okay, 1 more pansa. And maybe it was 4 days out of 7 that I wanted to disrobe. But then after 3 pansas, I determined 2 more years. I can do 2 more years. I've got to 3, I can do 2 more years. I'll go to 5 pansas and fulfill that commitment. And maybe 2 days out of a week I wanted to disrobe. When I finally got to 5 pansas, that's after about 7 years of training, I was able to increase my commitment to another 5 years. And when I got to 10 years, I was able to increase my commitment to another 10. And I won't tell you what my latest commitment is, but what's interesting is our capacity to make a commitment and keep it increases when we make the commitment to the degree that we can fulfill now. Our capacity to make a deeper commitment of doing something harder for longer gets developed. But the commitment is important, because there's no way I would have survived the first 6 months had I not had a commitment to make it until at least the end of the rainy season retreat. And then there's no way I would have survived the next year had I not made a commitment to staying for that year, come hell or high water. A very interesting thing happened during my 10th pansa, which is related, for whatever reason, I was not thinking of disrobing, but I just had no energy for practice. It was a very strange rainy season retreat. There was no energy, there was no rapture, there was no joy. And it was the last day of pansa, and something kind of clicked in my mind. Are you going to continue the training? And that's when I remembered that at the end of my 5th pansa, I'd made a determination that I would stay until the end of my 10th pansa. And so what was occurring in my mind was that there was an expiry date coming up, and the energy was fizzling out because I didn't have a clear intention to continue. And so I wished I'd remembered that determination, and I wished I'd been aware of the way it was affecting me at the beginning of the 10th pansa, because I would have determined more, and I probably would have had a better rainy season retreat. And so the question comes, are you going to continue? I was like, well, of course. And so I determined another 10 years. Actually, I was invited to go to India, and I made another vow in Bodh Gaya that I would continue for another 10 years as a bhikkhu. And then sure enough, good energy came back. So I think having determination and having a firm commitment definitely is conducive to the arousal of the energy that you need to fulfill that vow. And so I don't know what people's determinations or commitments are, but I just wanted to share that in my experience, committing deeply and then making the effort to fulfill that commitment, and then committing further when you can, but being really clear. You have commitment and you have determination. So for lay people, that might be around how many times a week that you will meditate, or how many times a day that you will meditate. There might need to be some clear decisions, and it probably needs to be unnegotiable. So if you have a very busy life, or you have periods where you're busy, it might only be possible 4 times a week. But if you're not so busy, it might be good to make a commitment to every day, or a couple of times a day. And I sometimes train my semi-retired Chinese Malaysian students. I tell them that I hope that they will be able to do 3 sessions a day, because if you want to be mindful throughout the day of your mind states, and if you want to be able to let go of the unwholesome, you are going to need good mental clarity and energy, a certain amount of collectiveness to do that. So in my experience, meditating every morning, every afternoon, and every evening, every day is what makes that possible. And I often meet people who come and talk to me who've been practicing for 10 years or 15 years, and they say, I don't know if the method's wrong, or I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, or maybe I need a new method. I've been practicing for 10 years or 15 years, and I just don't feel like I'm getting very good results. And I ask them, well, how long do you meditate? And they say, well, half an hour, or 45 minutes. And I'm like, well, it's not, for the kind of results you want, the effort that you're putting in isn't yet enough. And so if you can, put forth more effort, and you'll probably find that you'll get better results. So it's an important thing to consider. How much time do we spend with distraction or discursive activity, and how much time do we really have, and how do we use that time? And then make some kind of resolutions and stick to them. Just like your teacher, Luang Por Pasanno, has done so well and so publicly for all of you to see. When he makes a commitment, he follows through until a culmination, and puts up with any number of difficulties in the process. And just as I did, I made it through my novice year, my Navaka years, and I'm still here. And so, I've been talking for a while. I think that's probably enough. Thank you for taking good care of me and welcoming me. It's very nice to come to another monastery as a senior monk. I've been able to do as much meditation as I like in the morning and just come down to the meal. No chores meeting, and enjoying these beautiful, endless blue skies, Northern Californian summer. And so I've enjoyed my stay, and nice to get to know some more members of the community. And I wholeheartedly wish you success and growth in this next interesting phase in your community's experience. And the last thing I'll say, just to bring it back to this hopefully central message is Luang Por Pasanno has been a very important part of your refuge, and still is, even when he goes away. Whatever memories you have of his teachings, if you listen to his teachings, if you read his books, he continue to be part of your refuge of Sangha and your Luang Por. But the Buddha and the Kruba Ajahns, they're teaching us where the real refuge is. And so the real refuge has to be inside. And so your teacher going away for a year is, I believe, a very good opportunity and a creative challenge that you have now. It's like, okay, now you have to recollect what he taught you. And you have to try to do it. And the refuge, whatever mindfulness you can have, whatever concentration you can have, whatever wisdom you can have, whatever sila, whatever virtue that you maintain that is then there in your heart, well, that's part of your refuge. And that's the refuge that we're all cultivating. And our teachers remind us what we need to do. And our teachers can encourage us when we're struggling. And our teachers can admonish us when we're being stubborn. But the real refuge and the real place where you realize that the Dhamma is a refuge, the Dhamma is meaning truth, the deeper truth of the way things are, that has to be realized and experienced, developed, cultivated in your mind, in your heart. And so, Ajahn Pasanno, Luang Por Pasanno, going away for a year, is your opportunity to deepen that refuge in your own mind. And sometimes pain is growing pain. And so I certainly hope that whatever pain that occurs in the process is a pain which is conducive to growth in having a deeper sense of refuge in your own hearts. So I offer that as my reflection.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Do you bow a second time?
Depends on whether we're going to end or